The calf did not crash. No shouting, no locks on the door, no angry post. One day it was there. Then it was not. Chairs still stacked, menu still online. But the lights stayed off. And in that quiet fade, something bigger broke. Not money, not business, trust. So here's the question nobody wanted to ask out loud. If a relationship cannot survive shared responsibility, what was holding it together all along? For months, fans watched Jenny and Sumit talk about the calf like it was their fresh chapter. Their proof. Their answer to every doubt thrown at them for years. Love won. Family pressure lost. New life in India. You remember the vibe. Smiles, hope, big talk about independence. And then silence. The kind of silence you only notice after something important disappears. This was not about one bad day or a slow week. This was about the moment the calf stopped being a dream and started asking for grown-up behavior. Bills. Cash. Counting. Rules. The boring stuff. The stuff cameras love to skip. And once that part showed up, everything shifted. You could feel it even before anyone said a word. Sumit looked tired in a way love does not fix. Jenny looked defensive in a way hope cannot hide. And the calf stopped feeling like a team effort. People online kept asking what happened. Was it location? Was it money? Was it family drama again? But the real story sits in what never got explained. No goodbye. No thank you post. No we tried our best. The calf did not fail loudly. It failed quietly. And quiet failure hits harder because it forces reflection. Because here's the uncomfortable part. Running a calf is not romantic. It is shared stress, shared mistakes, shared accountability. When one person freezes and the other bleeds, resentment grows fast. And once resentment sets in, love turns cold. And what happened next explains why this silence mattered more than any fight ever could. Nothing ended with a fight. That part matters. The calf did not explode on camera. No scene. No argument fans could clip and replay. It ended the way real pressure ends things. Quietly. One day fewer hours. Then fewer items. Then doors closed on random mornings. And before anyone processed it, the place faded out of daily life. That silence became the loudest clue. Because silence does not happen when people feel proud. Silence shows up when explanations hurt too much. And once viewers noticed the calf fading, a second shift happened. Jenny and Sumit stopped sounding united, not openly divided. Something colder. Conversations turned careful. Smiles turned thin. The calf stopped being their shared win and turned into a shared wound. The speed shocked people. Weeks, not years. A place meant to secure their future started slipping fast. Fans expected slow struggle. They saw fast erosion. That alone raised eyebrows. Businesses struggle all the time. But this one collapsed before routine settled, before trust formed, before learning curves even finished. Money sat at the center of it all. Not greed, not luxury. Basics, counting, charging, tracking. The dull parts nobody glamorizes. Once those basics slipped, everything else followed. When money enters a relationship under stress, it removes fantasy. Numbers do not flatter. Numbers do not care about intentions. They show gaps, and gaps create blame. Sumit faced pressure from every side. Suppliers wanted answers. Staff wanted clarity. Family wanted reassurance. Jenny faced a different pressure. Feeling watched. Feeling judged. Feeling blamed. Instead of pulling closer, both pulled inward. That gap grew quickly, and this is where the first loop locks in. Something happened early that accelerated the collapse far faster than anyone expected. Because calves do not fall apart in silence unless structure disappears. Something in daily operations broke, not once, repeatedly. And when problems repeat, patience runs out fast. People nearby noticed patterns. Confusion at the counter. Prices shifting. Free items appearing. Receipts failing to match expectations. Small things that stack heavy when repeated. Money turned into the breaking point because money demands clarity. Emotions resist clarity. When someone avoids numbers, Others carry the weight. When one person bleeds quietly, resentment grows. And resentment poisons teamwork faster than any outside enemy. Jenny and Sumit sold the calf as a partnership. Equal effort, shared responsibility. But pressure exposes reality. Who tracks? Who decides? Who corrects mistakes? Once answers drifted apart, trust weakened. Then came the part fans did not see. Decisions started happening off camera. Quiet conversations, family input, operational changes. And Jenny felt blindsided. Not because she lost control. Because control shifted without consent. That shift hurt more than any argument. And here's the second loop. Decisions began moving around Jenny before she realized her role had changed. People often focus on money alone. That misses the emotional fracture. Losing involvement hurts more than losing profit. It signals distrust. It signals replacement. Once someone feels replaced, they stop fighting for the system that pushed them out. This story never hinged on cruelty. It hinged on fear. Fear of loss. Fear of failure. Fear of embarrassment. When fear leads, communication breaks down. And when communication breaks, people protect themselves first. Fans kept asking why no explanation arrived. Silence served protection. Any explanation would expose cracks neither side wanted aired. Silence avoided choosing sides publicly. Silence kept peace short-term. Long-term, silence deepened distance. And the final loop settles in here. When silence replaces teamwork, what else starts falling apart behind closed doors? This calf did not fail overnight. It failed the moment shared responsibility stopped feeling shared. And once that happens, recovery grows unlikely. Because rebuilding trust requires openness. Silence kills openness. The real shock was not the closure. It was how fast equality disappeared. And once equality fades, relationships enter dangerous ground. Before the silence, there was belief. Real belief. Jenny and Sumit did not pitch the calf as a side hustle or a cute idea. They treated it like proof. Proof they belonged together. Proof they belonged in India. Proof love was not only emotional, but functional. Fans saw two people trying to build something with their own hands. That mattered. For years, their relationship lived in reaction mode. Family pressure, cultural clashes, outside judgment. The calf flipped the story. This was proactive. This was them choosing stability instead of defending chaos. A shared routine, a shared responsibility, a shared future. Viewers rooted for that shift because it felt earned. The calf symbolized adulthood. Not romance, not rebellion. Bills paid on time. Staff treated fairly. Doors opening every morning. Those basics carry weight. Jenny spoke openly about wanting independence. Sumit spoke about pride. This was their answer to every critic who said the relationship survived on emotion alone. Hope lived in those early scenes. Jenny looked energized. Sumit looked confident. The place looked welcoming. No mockery fits here. Many couples try something similar. Many relationships attempt reinvention through work. The intent felt sincere. Fans sensed a turning point. The calf also carried deeper meaning. It was Jenny stepping into Indian life with structure. Not only residence, participation, contribution. For Sumit, it meant presenting his marriage to family as sustainable. Something respectable. Something rooted. This was not foolish ambition. This was symbolic effort. And right here, hope peaked. Because this moment promised a reset that felt solid and earned. Early reactions stayed positive. People praised the courage. They praised the grind. Running a calf looks simple on screen. Off screen, it demands discipline. Nobody expected perfection. Viewers expected learning, growth, adjustment. Those expectations felt fair. What fans missed was how fragile the setup already stood. Not doomed, fragile. Systems were new. Roles felt loose. Responsibilities overlapped without clarity. Optimism covered gaps early. Optimism does that. It smooths rough edges until pressure arrives. Jenny embraced the front-facing role, greeting customers, creating warmth. That aligned with her personality. Sumit focused on supply and logistics. That division looked natural. The problem was not the split. The problem sat in what nobody clarified. Who handled money fully? Who corrected mistakes? Who enforced rules? At first, kindness masked confusion. Free gestures felt generous. Flexibility felt friendly. Small slips looked harmless. When days moved fast, nobody slowed down to tighten structure. Fans saw smiles. They missed stress signals. This is where the story tilts, because the first crack showed up quietly and nobody called it out. Hope often delays accountability. People avoid awkward conversations early to protect momentum. That pattern played out here. Jenny leaned on warmth. Sumit leaned on trust. Both believed good intentions would carry weight. The CAF also carried emotional stakes. Failure would not look like business trouble. Failure would feel personal. That fear made correction harder. Nobody wanted to admit struggle too soon. Nobody wanted to validate critics. The relationship energy during this phase stayed soft. Not tense, not hostile. Softness hides imbalance well. Fans focused on visuals. They missed the absence of clear systems. TLC loves optimism. Reality punishes ambiguity. Looking back, the early scenes feel gentle. Too gentle. The CAF asked for discipline early. Discipline arrived late. That delay mattered. And this is the hook that matters most, because the smallest ignored issue later shaped every hard decision that followed. By the time pressure built, roles already drifted. Corrections felt personal instead of procedural. Feedback sounded like blame. Silence replaced clarity. The CAF did not break trust suddenly. Trust eroded inch by inch. Hope does not disappear in one moment. It fades when reality demands structure and nobody steps forward together. That early optimism makes the collapse sting more. Fans did not miss warning signs. They never saw them framed as warnings. The CAF started as proof. That belief deserves fairness. The tragedy sits in how quickly proof turned into pressure. And once pressure exposed cracks, everything that followed felt inevitable. Then daily routine arrived. Not drama, routine. And routine exposes patterns faster than conflict ever does. The counter became the center of gravity. Orders came in. Cash moved hands. Prices needed consistency. Small moments repeated all day. This is where behavior started speaking louder than intention. On screen, confusion surfaced more than once. Customers hesitated, totals shifted, change got double-checked. Sometimes food went out without payment. Not as a stunt, not as generosity with strategy behind it. It looked uncomfortable. Jenny herself acknowledged discomfort handling money publicly. No hiding. No denial. She said it. Money made her uneasy. That honesty matters. Discomfort alone is not a failure. Many people struggle with numbers in new settings. New currency, new systems, new pressure. That happens. The problem arrives when discomfort stays untreated while responsibility stays the same. Pricing inconsistency followed. Same item. Different totals. Staff pausing. Customers noticing. Confusion spreads fast in a small space. Once customers sense flexibility, behavior shifts. Some ask questions. Some push limits. Some walk away confused. Free food moments appeared. Not framed as charity, framed as avoidance. When the line grows and pressure spikes, giving something away feels easier than slowing down. Avoidance keeps peace short-term. Long-term, it bleeds systems dry. This is where the question forms quietly. When does discomfort stop being personal and start becoming damage? The CAF needed structure. Structure requires repetition. Same price, same process, same end-of-day count. Those routines reduce stress. Without them, every interaction becomes improvisation. Improvisation drains energy fast. Jenny leaned into warmth. Greeting, smiling, diffusing tension. That strength works in many roles. At the counter, warmth without structure creates gaps. Sumit handled supply and logistics. That split worked until money demanded alignment. None of this signals malice, no accusations fit here. These were signals. Signals of misfit between role and comfort. Signals that needed adjustment early. Adjustment did not arrive. Publicly, Jenny admitted discomfort more than once. That admission should have triggered change. Change means training. Change means reassignment. Change means structure. Instead, responsibility stayed in place while discomfort stayed unresolved. Employees notice patterns faster than viewers. They see repetition. They see stress points. When staff feel unsure, morale drops. When morale drops, mistakes increase. The cycle tightens. Money mistakes do not scream. They whisper. A little missing here. A little free there. One shift bleeds into the next. By the time someone adds numbers, the story looks bigger than any single moment. And this is the open loop fans missed. Small signals ignored early later forced choices nobody wanted to make. This segment of the story matters because it shows how collapse starts quietly. No villain. No explosion. Just discomfort left unattended. When people avoid what makes them uneasy, systems suffer. Relationships feel that strain too. Correction becomes sensitive. Feedback feels personal. Partners hesitate to push. Nobody wants to look controlling. Nobody wants to look incapable. Silence grows. Front counter confusion did not end the CAF. It exposed a mismatch. The real damage came from keeping the mismatch in place too long. By the time pressure increased, options narrowed. What could have been a role adjustment early turned into a credibility issue later. And once credibility slips, trust follows. This was not about blame. This was about signals. And the cost of ignoring signals always shows up later. Pressure does not announce itself. It accumulates. Inventory shortages were the first hard signal that could not be smiled through. Items ran out too early. Deliveries did not line up with sales. Supplies disappeared faster than expected. These were not random glitches. They were math asking questions. Suppliers noticed before viewers did. Orders changed. Payments hesitated. Follow-ups increased. That quiet stress spreads fast in a small operation. When suppliers lose certainty, they tighten terms. When terms tighten, flexibility vanishes. The CAF's margin narrowed. Staff confusion grew heavier. End-of-day counts felt off. Nobody could say exactly why. Shifts blended together without clear reconciliation. People stopped trusting numbers and started trusting instinct. Instinct works in emergencies. It fails as policy. Sumit began facing what optimism had delayed. The numbers did not match reality. Not once. Repeatedly. That realization shifts a person. He moved from pride to protection mode. Protection mode narrows focus. Emotions tighten. Decisions speed up. This is where psychology matters. Avoidance versus responsibility. Avoidance delays discomfort. Responsibility absorbs it. Jenny avoided money handling because it caused stress. Sumit absorbed pressure because someone had to. That imbalance creates resentment even when love remains. The CAF now demanded intervention, training, restructuring, hard conversations. Each option carried emotional cost. Correcting a partner feels heavier than correcting an employee. Silence feels easier than conflict. Silence also compounds damage. This is where tension replaces hope, because the problem no longer sits in theory, it sits in numbers. Inventory gaps expose truth quickly. If items leave without payment, stock shrinks without explanation. If pricing shifts, margins collapse invisibly. By the time inventory reveals loss, correction feels overdue. Sumit started tracking closer, counting, questioning, watching patterns. That shift changed the atmosphere. Jenny felt observed. Observation without clarity breeds defensiveness. Defensiveness shuts communication down. Staff sensed instability. When leadership feels divided, teams hesitate. Hesitation slows service. Slow service irritates customers. Irritation creates more pressure. The cycle tightens again. Supplier stress turned urgent. Delayed payments strain relationships fast. A calf lives on trust beyond the counter. Once external partners feel risk, survival shortens. The audience senses it here. Something has to happen. This cannot continue unchanged. Psychologically, this stage traps couples. If Sumit pushes, he risks damaging trust. If he does nothing, the business bleeds. Responsibility feels lonely when shared systems fail. Avoidance shows up in small ways. Postponed conversations, soft phrasing, temporary fixes. Those delay collapse but increase cost. Responsibility demands structure and confrontation. Both hurt. Only one stabilizes. The calf no longer symbolized independence. It symbolized stress. That shift matters. Symbols shape behavior. When pride turns into anxiety, people protect themselves first. Intervention loomed, not dramatic, necessary. And necessity carries weight. This segment ends on that tension. Viewers feel it tightening. The calf is no longer failing quietly. It is demanding a decision. And once a decision enters, the relationship will feel it immediately. Family involvement changed everything. Not like a TV villain walking in. Practical, urgent, unavoidable. When money starts bleeding faster than anyone can plug the leaks, intervention becomes necessity. Sumit's family saw what optimism and kindness had hidden. The calf was no longer just a test of skill. It was a test of trust. Supplies running low. Staff unsure of procedures. Receipts that did not add up. These were not abstract concerns. They were measurable, undeniable evidence. Family noticed gaps that fans could not see on screen. They saw stress patterns, repeated errors, and the looming financial hole that had started quietly, but now could no longer be ignored. They had risk on the line too. Loans, savings, reputation in the community. Every rupee invested carried weight. If the calf failed, it was more than a business loss. It became a public reminder that decisions had consequences, that systems matter even when intentions are good. They knew the stakes. They knew delay would worsen outcomes. The first audit moments made things real. Ledgers reviewed. Inventory checked. Transactions tallied. Numbers do not argue, they reveal. That clarity can feel harsh when love is involved. What some saw as intrusion, others saw as responsible oversight. It was not about undermining Jenny. It was about protecting what could still be salvaged. Sumit had to listen. He had to reconcile family concern with partnership loyalty. That tension created the first real fracture visible on screen. Not because anyone acted cruelly, but because systems demand accountability and love does not excuse error. This is the point where viewers are asked to consider, if love exists, does it survive scrutiny? Jenny's role became front and center in a new way. Her discomfort handling money was no longer a private challenge. It was now public, structured, undeniable. The family did not attack her personally. They observed patterns. They drew lines. They offered solutions that felt invasive to her, but were designed to stop further loss. And here, the question begins to twist. Is protection control, or is it responsibility? Observers on screen saw tension escalate. Conversations that once felt private now carried weight. Recommendations became instructions. Soft suggestions became mandates. Every instruction was a test. Could the couple absorb guidance without resentment? Could love absorb practical correction without collapsing? Behind the calf's closed doors, emotions ran high. Arguments flared quietly, voices raised just enough for staff and neighbors to notice. But these were not public battles. They were procedural. They were reality asserting itself. Staff witnessed a line between goodwill and governance. Staff noticed who could adapt, who could maintain calm under pressure, and who resisted structure. The audit revealed more than missing numbers. It revealed misalignment in priorities. The couple's division of labor, once intended as complementary, now exposed fault lines. Sumit's focus on logistics contrasted with Jenny's struggles at the counter. That imbalance became impossible to ignore. Fans could see clips. They could see charts, receipts, and statements. But they could not feel the weight of choices that carried real consequences for relationships and livelihoods. The CAF had transformed from dream to proving ground. Every decision now echoed beyond the register. And this retention hook lands here. Can love survive when accountability is unavoidable? This segment closes with quiet tension. The CAF's numbers demanded intervention. Family stepped in, not as antagonists but as safety net and a warning system. Decisions were imminent. Trust would be tested. Choices would have emotional consequences. The open loop lingers. What happens when love and responsibility collide in a high-stakes, emotionally charged environment? Jenny felt every eye on her, even when no one said a word. Every ledger checked, every instruction given, every ledger discrepancy whispered judgment. It was not just about numbers anymore. It was about her role, her credibility, her presence. She felt singled out. The counter became a stage she never asked to perform on. Embarrassment surfaced quickly. Miscounted change, pricing errors, small giveaways. Each moment repeated itself in front of staff, in front of customers, and through the quiet observation of family. Jenny's warmth and charm that usually disarmed tension now felt like fuel for scrutiny. She interpreted correction as personal rejection. Every step back, every suggestion from Sumit or his family landed as a blow. Sumit, on the other hand, stood in a pressure cooker of conflicting priorities. He wanted to support his wife. He wanted to save the CAF. He wanted to maintain family trust. Those goals collided. Every choice carried risk. Intervened too harshly, and Jenny's confidence eroded further. Step back, and the financial hole widened. Protect the CAF, and he risked straining the marriage. Protect the marriage, and the CAF bled money. This dynamic escalated quietly but relentlessly. On screen, the tension might seem subtle, but the weight behind each glance, each tally, each whispered comment was enormous. Jenny felt unseen, unheard, unfairly judged. Sumit felt trapped, cornered, responsible for outcomes he could not fully control alone. Empathy here is essential. The audience sees the human stakes without needing to excuse mistakes. Jenny's discomfort was real. Sumit's pressure was real. Neither is inherently wrong. Neither is fully right. Both are navigating circumstances that demand more than emotion. They demand skill, adaptation, and accountability. And this is where the private decision starts moving behind the scenes. Every interaction carried micro choices with macro impact. A gentle suggestion about the register. A corrected tally. A reassigned duty. Each action silently shifted trust and authority. Fans watching online might feel divided. Was Jenny being unfairly treated? Or was Sumit forced to act to protect everything they had invested? Comments erupted in real time as viewers debated. Some empathized with Jenny's emotional experience. Others aligned with Sumit's sense of necessity. The CAF was no longer simply a business. It had become a mirror for their relationship. Patterns repeated in transactions now reflected patterns in partnership. Avoidance versus responsibility. Comfort versus duty. Personality versus process. Every cash discrepancy carried the weight of relational tension. Jenny's frustration mounted. Small corrective actions, meant to stabilize operations, were framed as attacks. She argued privately and internally. Had she ever been given enough support to succeed? Had she been set up to fail? Those questions remained unresolved on screen. Sumit's decisions, meanwhile, were deliberate but emotionally costly. Every moment of intervention reminded him that failure was visible, unavoidable, and potentially permanent. Protecting the CAF meant asserting authority, which risked marital friction. Protecting the marriage risked financial ruin. Lands here. While Jenny wrestled with perceived rejection, a quiet move was already being set in motion that would shift control without fanfare. By the end of this segment, Viewers are drawn into a private struggle layered under visible operations. The CAF, once a symbol of independence, had become a crucible of trust, skill, and resilience. Every tally, every instruction, every miscount now had emotional and practical consequence. The audience feels the tension growing. They sense an unseen decision is about to land, a pivot that will change the dynamic completely. Emotions are raw, stakes are high, and both empathy and curiosity drive viewers to keep watching, waiting for the moment when private choices become public reality. The shift was silent, but unmistakable. One day, Jenny was at the register, managing orders, greeting customers, handling the cash. The next, she was stepping back. Not a confrontation, not an announcement, just absence. The register no longer carried her name. Responsibilities she had held became someone else's domain. The CAF's rhythm changed without fanfare, and the air carried a new weight. Resigned, quiet, inevitable. A family member stepped in. Their approach was firm, methodical, practical. Pricing rules were tightened. Free food no longer passed as goodwill, it was prohibited. Every rupee counted, every transaction monitored. The warmth of generosity was replaced with control. Staff adjusted quickly, and so did customers. But the atmosphere shifted. The CAF was still open, still operating, but it felt different. Something had been removed. Jenny noticed immediately. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was a slow erasure. Orders came her way, but the cash drawer did not. Decisions she once contributed to were now closed to her. Instructions she had previously given were redirected through someone else. The change was factual, operational, undeniable. She tried to participate, but the boundaries were firm. Every step reminded her of what she no longer controlled. Customers reacted too. Regulars who had grown used to flexible pricing and the occasional free meal were confused, frustrated, sometimes vocal. Some walked out without paying, unwilling to adjust. Foot traffic slowed as word spread. The CAF's charm was intact, but its ease, its spontaneity, its openness was gone. Business was still possible, but it required adaptation and acceptance that not everything would feel the same. The tone in the CAF became cold, measured. Staff moved efficiently, conversations were clipped, smiles less frequent. The human warmth that had existed alongside mistakes was now filtered through procedure. The CAF had become operational first, emotional second. Jenny felt the impact personally, emotionally, socially. Her role had been reduced without argument, negotiation, or discussion. She was present, but diminished. Observing from the outside, it looked like control, but in practice, it was damage control. The CAF was bleeding financial and operationally. Action was necessary, urgent, and unavoidable. Every restriction, every new rule, every tightened process was aimed at stopping loss, maintaining staff morale, and preserving the family's investment. And yet, the human cost was clear. Jenny's agency, her sense of belonging, had quietly been removed. What does it mean when the people closest to you make decisions about your life and work without telling you? This was not about yelling, fighting, or assigning blame. It was about erasure. Actions happened without dialogue. Limits were drawn, lines were enforced. Jenny's input no longer shaped the daily reality of the CAF. Every miscount, every error, every hesitation now had consequences she could no longer directly mitigate. The shift was methodical, not emotional, but the effect was devastating. The quiet nature of the change amplified the impact. No public confrontation, no dramatic scene, just absence, rules, and tightened control. And yet, the signal was clear. Jenny's role had changed. Control had shifted. Authority had moved elsewhere. The CAF, once a shared dream, now functioned under oversight she could not influence. By the end of this segment, the audience feels the weight of procedural erasure. There is no fight to watch, only evidence of displacement. Viewers are left wondering, if decisions happen without discussion, where does trust survive? Where does partnership exist when authority is silently reassigned? The cliffhanger lingers, emotionally and practically, compelling viewers to continue, to see how the couple navigates this new, colder reality. The cafe's quiet collapse didn't stay behind the counter. Its impact bled into every corner of Jenny and Sumit's life. Once, their marriage had carried laughter, excitement, and shared hope. Now, conversations carried the weight of calculation. Love had shifted to logistics. Every discussion about food orders, inventory, and staff assignments carried the subtext of unfinished business. Personal exchanges were measured, filtered through the lens of responsibility and survival. Jenny's energy changed first. Where once she moved freely, she now approached tasks cautiously. Every suggestion from Sumit or his family was met with internal debate. Was this correction or criticism? Instruction or rejection? Small gestures that used to feel collaborative now felt like reminders of what she had lost. Her presence at the cafe, her influence over the dream she had helped shape, had been quietly diminished. The emotional strain showed in posture, in tone, in the subtle pullback from interaction. Sumit felt it too. The man who had balanced optimism with pragmatism now operated in a state of constant calculation. Each decision weighed risk against loyalty, love against necessity. The pressure of protecting the cafe while maintaining marital equilibrium was relentless. He no longer had the luxury of simple encouragement or shared joy. Every move was a compromise, every choice a negotiation between his commitment to Jenny and his obligation to reality. Observers of their dynamic might notice how transactional conversations became. Requests, clarifications, and reminders replaced casual dialogue. Intimacy was filtered through practicality. Emotional reactions were muted, measured, considered. Even moments that might have sparked humor or warmth now carried tension, because every interaction reminded them of what had been lost behind the scenes. The shift was subtle to outsiders, but unmistakable to those living it. The cafe, meant to be a symbol of shared growth, had become a mirror of imbalance. Patterns that had existed quietly in their relationship, differences in accountability, approaches to adaptation, reactions to stress, were now amplified. Avoidance and discomfort were no longer manageable. They were unavoidable, tangible, with real consequences. Jenny wrestled with internal conflict. She wanted to feel part of the team, part of the dream. Yet the repeated sidelining eroded confidence. Each corrective action she observed, each new rule enforced, was another reminder that her place in decision-making had diminished. She began internalizing the separation of authority, and it bled into the way she engaged with Sumit personally. Where warmth had once been shared freely, now interactions were careful, measured, protective. Sumit, caught between devotion and survival, could not restore the former ease. His focus was divided, attention constantly shifting between operational needs and relational repair. Love could not operate in isolation from reality, and reality was unforgiving. The tension, though subtle in daily conversation, carried heavy emotional consequences. Their shared dream of the cafe had been a testing ground. The outcome of that experiment had proven more consequential than either had expected. The cafe was just the beginning. What happens when a private failure triggers public, life-altering choices? Friends and fans began to notice the energy change. Social media commentary reflected the tension. Some empathized with Jenny, others rationalized Sumit's choices. The debate over fairness and responsibility erupted online. Yet the true shifts were intimate, nuanced, and private. Love for the couple was no longer a spontaneous connection. It became a calculated exchange of time, attention, and compromise. The quiet consequences also created practical ripple effects. Decisions about household responsibilities, financial contributions, and social obligations became embedded with caution. What used to be discussion became planning. What used to be affection became negotiation. Each interaction carried the invisible weight of accountability, the residue of lessons learned the hard way, and the looming shadow of unspoken decisions. By the end of this segment, viewers feel the subtle but undeniable emotional fallout. The CAF was no longer just a failed business. It was the catalyst for a recalibration of life itself. The audience senses that what began behind the counter has forced a broader, unavoidable decision. A private choice, already hinted at in earlier segments, is about to reshape the couple's trajectory, leaving viewers emotionally invested and desperate to see what comes next. The CAF didn't close with a bang. There were no dramatic goodbyes, no farewell posts, no media coverage. It simply stopped being. Staff arrived to reduced hours, certain menu items vanished, and familiar faces went missing from behind the counter. Regular customers noticed the shift too. Where once they could count on smiling greetings and casual flexibility, now there was absence and silence. The CAF had faded quietly from the public eye, and with it, the sense of promise it had carried. Jenny's presence diminished alongside the CAF's visibility. Where she once stood at the heart of operations, making decisions and interacting with customers, now her role was muted, almost ghost-like. Fans watching online, scrolling through social updates, saw the gaps. Posts became sparse, check-ins were rare, and the warmth that once defined the CAF's identity vanished. The public began asking questions, noticing patterns, piecing together a story of withdrawal without commentary. The disappearance of menu items symbolized more than operational change. Favorites that had drawn crowds were quietly removed. Specials that once showcased creativity and engagement were gone. Each removed dish reflected the practical tightening of controls, but also the emotional erosion behind the scenes. The CAF's original charm, the shared dream of independence, had been replaced by management and mitigation. What was once a symbol of partnership and ambition now signaled loss and constraint. Fans began speculating. Social media threads filled with questions and theories. Why was the CAF opening later some days? Why were favorite menu items missing? Why was Jenny absent from posts and stories? No clear answers emerged. The silence itself became the narrative. The story of failure was told not through words, but through absence, through what wasn't there. The quietness amplified the sense of inevitability. What had started as a hopeful beginning was quietly dissolving. When silence tells the story, what does it say about the future of the people behind it? Inside the CAF, staff noticed the change as well. Processes were enforced strictly, routines were monitored, and flexibility disappeared. Employees who had grown accustomed to small liberties, free meals, leniency on timing, adjustments for mistakes, now faced a rigid, rule-driven environment. The operational focus was necessary, but the human warmth had diminished. The CAF was still functioning, but it was no longer living. For Jenny and Sumit, the fading CAF mirrored their internal reality. The dream that had brought them together, the shared hope of proving themselves in a foreign land, was dissolving quietly. Love, effort, and optimism had met structural pressure, and the result was absence. The CAF's slow disappearance became a metaphor. Shared dreams can fail not only from mistakes, but from the erosion of collaboration and trust over time. Observers outside the situation could only piece together fragments. Reduced hours, disappearing items, quiet staff, muted social media posts, they formed a pattern of decline. The CAF was not publicly declared dead, but everyone could see the signs. Silence had become a language. And in that silence, the weight of unspoken decisions and unaddressed tensions grew heavier. By the end of this segment, viewers feel the full emotional weight of quiet collapse. The calf was not merely a business failure. It was a dream, a symbol of partnership and a reflection of unresolved personal and relational challenges, disappearing without notice. The audience is left with the lingering question of what happens when a dream fades silently and the people behind it are left to navigate the aftermath. The calf's story is more than missed orders and disappearing menu items. It acted as a mirror, reflecting patterns in Jenny and Sumit's relationship that had always been there, but were often hidden under optimism and affection. Every miscount, every free meal, every silent intervention revealed how adaptation, shared responsibility, and accountability were tested, and in some cases, failed. What seemed like operational errors were, in reality, the same dynamics playing out in the marriage itself. Jenny's reluctance or discomfort with handling money and the repeated missteps at the register were signals. They were behaviors that hinted at deeper issues around responsibility and readiness to adapt. This wasn't framed as judgment, but as observation. Each small error, each avoidance of accountability, compounded over time. Sumit, initially patient and trusting, was forced into a difficult role. He had to reconcile his loyalty to his wife with the practical needs of the calf and the expectations of his family. Every choice he made carried weight, and every inaction allowed small cracks to become chasms. The family's involvement, though often criticized in commentary, also reflected practical intervention. They weren't there to humiliate or dominate. They were stepping in to prevent financial collapse, protect reputations, and enforce basic operational standards. Their presence highlighted the collision between emotional investment and pragmatic necessity. In observing how Jenny responded, feeling embarrassed, singled out, or misunderstood, we see how human emotions interact with structural pressure. Avoidance of responsibility breeds tension, and tension compounds when decisions must be made quickly and quietly. The quiet removal of Jenny from financial decisions and operational control was perhaps the starkest lesson. It wasn't dramatic, but it was decisive. Rules were tightened, freebies ended, and operational oversight became non-negotiable. The calf continued in a limited capacity, but the warmth, collaboration, and shared energy were gone. This silent shift spoke volumes. It revealed that without adaptation and accountability, even dreams built with love and hope are vulnerable to collapse. What happens when shared responsibility becomes a test no one can pass? And who gets left behind? Looking back, the calf failure can be read as a cautionary tale rather than a simple business story. Love and commitment are powerful, but they do not replace structure or shared effort. The repeated patterns, miscommunication, avoidance, uneven accountability, became visible only under sustained pressure. What the calf exposed was not just operational weakness, but relational dynamics in high definition. Fans and followers, whether rooting for Jenny, sympathizing with Sumit, or analyzing from afar, witnessed how everyday behaviors escalate into consequences that ripple far beyond the immediate environment. Jenny's emotional journey, from hope to embarrassment to gradual withdrawal, illustrates a truth familiar to many relationships. Being part of a partnership means engaging with discomfort, facing responsibilities, and accepting feedback even when it stings. Sumit's struggle to balance love with survival reflects a challenge faced by anyone caught between loyalty to people and the practical demands of life. The calf made these dynamics tangible, observable, and impossible to ignore. The silent collapse also reframes what it means to fail. The calf didn't close in public humiliation. It didn't announce its defeat. It disappeared quietly, leaving space for reflection, learning, and speculation. For Jenny and Sumit, that quietness was as much a signal as any argument or confrontation. It marked a turning point where optimism met reality, and where love alone could not bridge gaps left by uneven engagement and unshared burden. For viewers, the takeaway is subtle, but powerful. Relationships are tested not just in crisis, but in daily responsibility. Dreams built together require structure as much as desire. Adaptation, communication, and shared accountability are not optional. They are the foundation. When these elements falter, the consequences are visible, sometimes quietly, sometimes dramatically. The calf story demonstrates how repeated behavioral patterns manifest in practical outcomes, turning abstract tension into concrete results. As one chapter quietly ends, the next question looms. Can Jenny and Sumit rebuild together? Or is leaving India inevitable? As the narrative closes, the calf becomes a symbol, a mirror, and a lesson. It is a story about love, hope, and ambition meeting real-world pressures. It's about what happens when intention meets inexperience, when care meets mismanagement, and when affection meets consequence. The audience is left not with scandal, but with understanding. The events are a warning. Love without structure can falter, dreams without shared responsibility can fail, and silence often speaks louder than confrontation. The final beat naturally teases what comes next. Jenny's future in India, her place in the calf story, and the survival of her marriage with Sumit hang in the balance. Decisions made quietly behind the scenes have set the stage for what might be the ultimate test. Whether leaving is the final chapter, or whether a new beginning is possible once lessons are learned. Viewers are left at the edge, emotionally invested and eager to see how the next chapter unfolds.